It's no secret that Mercedes has a long way to go. At the Italian Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton was lapped by old rival Max Verstappen. For Hamilton, that showed just how wrong Mercedes is with their 2022 car. But while Mercedes struggled to come to grips with its latest car, some of its customers are having much better results. This is one of the first times in history that this has happened. So, how have Mercedes customer teams been able to perform better than the engine supplier? Stay tuned to find out. First up, the supplier. The engines that constructors use in Formula One are the heart of the cars. That's where they get all their power and speed from. They cost approximately $10 million, and for good reason. Without an engine, F1 cars would just be big go-karts. But not every team has the capacity to make its own engines. Ferrari, Mercedes, and Renault all have the advantage of making their engines in-house. Even for Red Bull, they have moved into the power unit manufacturing business over the last couple of years, taking over from Honda. As of this year, Red Bull Powertrains is officially powering the Red Bull car. But for teams like Alfa Romeo, Haas, McLaren, and Williams, they have to go shopping. And it's normal for these teams to switch up their engine suppliers every few years if they don't see results. McLaren started using Mercedes engines in 1995, and in just a few short years, they won the Driver and Constructors Championship. They did the same 10 years later for a young driver named Lewis Hamilton. But by 2014, their team was only 5th in the Constructors and looking for a change. So they switched to Honda before switching to Renault. Now they are back to Mercedes, and they had a good reason to. Mercedes had been the top dogs for 8 years straight and the undisputed kings of the turbo hybrid era. But by preseason testing this year, it was clear that there were already issues. At the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix, data showed that on the straights, Mercedes-powered teams were trailing by almost 10 kilometers per hour to the fastest team. That's the risk you take as a customer. Buyers beware. Next, bobbing again? One word that every Mercedes engineer is probably sick of hearing is porpoising. It's been the most common problem with the 2022 cars because of the added downforce generated through the bottom. Ground effects make for higher downforce and theoretically faster cars, but it also comes with a lot of drawbacks. And the porpoising effect is when the cars bob up and down when accelerating. For Mercedes, this is a problem that seems to never end. They have tried a range of solutions and have had no luck. The effect is holding back the top speed of their cars, which is pretty important to racing. But the porpoising effect is so bad that it's not just affecting the performance. Now it's seriously impacting the Mercedes drivers too. George Russell has said that the constant bouncing is giving him back and chest pain. At the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, Russell said, "This is the first weekend I've truly been struggling with my back and almost like chest pains from the severity of bouncing." But somehow, despite the bombing, Russell finished the race in P4. This led to Ralf Schumacher claiming that Russell is the better driver over Hamilton now, who finished in P13 behind the Aston Martins, an Alfa Romeo, and a Haas. Part of this could be down to different setups. In Australia, Hamilton had his car equipped with extra sensors to collect much-needed data on the performance of the aerodynamics and the height of the floor. Whatever it is, it seems like Russell is better able to adapt to the problems of the car. That's one thing he probably picked up at Williams. Now, McLaren and development. McLaren may have been questioning their contract with Mercedes after the start of the season. Their first race out was one to forget, with their drivers coming in P14 and P15. Many commentators thought that the source of their issue was engine-related. That would have been much trickier to solve because this year's power units can only be changed marginally up. Plus, there's an engine freeze coming at the end of the year. If McLaren were stuck with a dud Mercedes power unit, then their troubles could be locked in for years to come. Red Bull advisor Helmut Marko has said time and time again that if Mercedes can fix their porpoising and aerodynamic issues, then they could have a competitive car. But while Mercedes hasn't been able to make much headway, it seems that McLaren has. They have proven that the fundamental issue may not be with the power unit. A week before the Italian Grand Prix, an updated floor design was brought in to try and help minimize the bouncing and ground contact. Out of the gate at preseason testing, McLaren seemed to be the only team that had largely avoided porpoising. At the time, the team's technical director, James Key, said that they didn't seem to be suffering from the effect as much as other teams. He also said that because the conditions for porpoising were difficult to simulate, it wasn't because they had found a clever solution for it. With the team experiencing bouncing again, it must mean that some modifications have increased, causing the effect to resurface. But the results have been phenomenal for the papaya-skinned team. Whatever they have done should be a lesson to Mercedes. Don't give up. Coming up, how did Mercedes get it so wrong? And how are Mercedes taking out their frustrations on other teams? Don't go anywhere, because all of that and more is coming right up. At preseason testing earlier this year, all eyes were on Mercedes as usual. They had been the team best adapted to the regulation changes in 2014 and were heavy favorites to show up with a race-winning design. At the first session in Barcelona, nothing on the Mercedes car seemed to be too different from other cars on the grid. But by the time the teams landed in Bahrain, it was a radically different Mercedes. They had trimmed down the side pods in a move that no other constructor had attempted. Usually, teams fit radiators, heat exchangers, and a range of electronics in the side pods. But Mercedes may have moved some of this away from the side pods in an effort to streamline the car. Along with the shape of the car, Mercedes brought a new intercooler system and a few nifty innovations. Either they had got it very right or very wrong. Based on the success of their cars in the past, most people assumed that they must have had solid data to back up the decision. And Formula One managing director Ross Brawn admitted that he didn't anticipate that kind of design when developing the regulations. There were even talks of a possible complaint being lodged in protest. But judging by the position of the Mercedes car, it looks like no team has any interest in challenging their design. What do you do if you can't be the best? You try and bring down the best. And the target of Mercedes says a lot about where they position themselves. Toto Wolff has questioned the legality of the Haas team's design. Along with some other constructors, he has concerns that Ferrari and Haas have shared information. The Ferrari, along with the Red Bull, has been the car to beat this season, and Haas is having a remarkable season, with Kevin Magnussen finishing in a career-high 5th place in Bahrain. This leap in performance is suspicious to Toto Wolff. For Gunther Steiner, it's all part of the job. He said that he welcomes protests and complaints because it's a sign of envy. If his car is performing so well that it's being called the White Ferrari, then they must have done something right. Mercedes are finding it hard to accept that they are barely fighting for podiums these days, after so many years of total domination. It's hard to believe that their winning days have run out. They are trying to find anything to grab onto, even complaints. Next, breaking the bank. A lot of the design issues that we are seeing now are the result of the new regulations. Not only have the new regulations brought in a radically different new car design that is intended for closer and more exciting racing, but budgets have been cut. The cost cap is now set to $140 million. And when you consider that top teams like Mercedes were spending up to $400 million a year in their heyday, that figure becomes a drop in the bucket. The spending reduction was expected to hit the big teams harder, but so far it seems like it's only Mercedes struggling. Red Bull and Ferrari are still at the top of the grid. So, what can the Silver Arrows do to change their fortune? Well, they can take inspiration from their customer teams. McLaren halved up impressive ground and clearly has unlocked some of the potential for their car. Do you think this is the end of Mercedes as we know them, or do they still have fight in them? Let us know in the comments below, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.